What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Carpool Gaming for our Last of Us post-show episode recaps for episode 8, titled When We Are in Need. My name's Matt, and I'll be your host for this evening's events. I'm joined, as always, by the Supreme Court of Canada himself, Mr. Court Lalonde. What's up, Court?
Hey, buddy.
How you doing?
I'm all right. It's a couple days before my vacation.
Yeah, that's right. And you're going to be going to the sunny beaches. You know, when I think of Florida's where you're going, right?
Yes.
I think the first word that people usually use to describe it is adorbs, right? Like things like Disneyland, like things like Universal. It's just adorbs, like left, right, center.
Isn't that the word that people describe Florida with lately?
Yeah, that's actually the one. If you Google adorbs, Florida comes up first.
I really doubt that one. Maybe armpit of the United States, but hey,
adorbs.
On my way.
And returning to the show once again, we have the $2 hero himself, Mr. Seth Sturgill. What's up, Seth? Seth? Wow.
Hey,
wow.
Tripping over
my many S's, eh?
Yeah, I know.
There's a lot of S's. I'm named like a Stan Lee character over here with the two.
You know what I did, Matt?
What?
Because of how many S's is it? I was having the very first episode of Carpool Weekly. There was a ton of takes for me to say his name. So we just changed it, and I was like, I'll say my name and you just say yours, and we're good.
Works.
Perfect. There
It
you go.
works.
Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep running through this. Welcome back, dude. It's nice to have you. Always appreciate you joining us. Because, yes, this week we are going to be talking about episode 8. We are going to be spoiling it entirely. So this is your big and giant spoiler warning as we dive into all things episode 8. Winter is an episode that we've been waiting for a long time. And let's just get into it, guys, because this is an episode, like I said, it's the penultimate episode of the first season. We're getting some huge moments here, some moments that we've been very much looking forward to. And Court, I know how much this section of the game means to you. I know how much this story section really vibes with you. How adorbs it really is, like, in each and every moment. So I just wanted to ask, thoughts and feelings. How'd you feel about episode 8?
Well, I was happy to all our predictions on how it would roll out and how there wouldn't be an infected pretty much in the whole episode came to fruition because they've been doing a lot of that in this series. I really think they've been trying to focus on the characters, and it totally makes sense. I love the nod to the rabbit, like who we all kidding. Yep. As soon as we all saw the white rabbit, we all did like, point at the screen. There it is. There it is.
That Leonardo DiCaprio meme.
I like how they got to it and they didn't spend so much time getting to that portion. They automatically go right to David talking to his flock, because I guess that's what they are.
Flocks.
We know as someone who played the game, that's, they're cannibals, but the people there don't know they are. And from what I remember about the game, the people there do know they are.
We don't really see too many of them. Like, there's a couple of them
but they talk about it, right?
A couple of them do talk about it, but it does seem that, like, he references in the show that some of them know, but not everyone. So I feel like the group was bigger in the show comparatively. But yeah.
And so I really thought they did a phenomenal job on, Ellie getting away from Joel. Ellie, even her conversation with David, it was almost beat for beat. It was very well done. I thought Troy Baker was phenomenal in his portray. I thought he did a great job. The actor, I unfortunately don't know his name, who played David. I thought he did a phenomenal job as well. I thought everybody did a very good job, but it didn't have the impact of Joel saying baby girl like it did to me in the game. Okay. I get where they went from with her running away and making, because this was an Ellie episode, like beyond Ellie episode. This was beyond. But I think the buildup of Joel doing what he does to get to her, we didn't get enough of it. I think they could have got a little bit longer with Joel, literally his dad moment, right? Of literally mowing through everything in his path to get to her. Literally. Like, I did love the interrogation scene. Yes. I thought that was, I thought Pedro Pascal, that's probably some of the best acting he has done on this series, just on his facial expressions of how much he was like, I'm getting my girl. Like, it's over.
Yep.
When he said baby girl, I thought he did a phenomenal job. I just didn't get that no words moment. In the game when they did the remake, and it's more so in the remake than it is in any other version, the facial expressions that Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson did during that scene blew me away. It was one of my favorite moments in the game's remake. in awe of how much acting they did with no words.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel like I got that scene outdoors. I don't feel like I got that. Like you see Ellie running out and they have that moment. And I think for the show, the moment was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
But when I already have had it before, it didn't give me the same feels. I've had many good, many feels moments throughout this. I didn't get that from that scene. And I know I'm in the minority because I saw the internet. I've seen everybody talk about it, but I didn't. I literally walked away for the first time ever a tiny bit disappointed.
Okay.
Just a tiny bit. That's all.
Fair. Seth, what about you? Thoughts and feelings?
Yeah, it's interesting that scene in particular. Like I definitely when I watched the episode for the first time, I had a similar reaction to Court, where I was like, I liked it better in the game, and I went back and I watched the scene from part one remake again, and then I watched the episode again, and I'm coming around to it more and more the more I sort of sit with it. I think what I really like about the show's version of that is the look of just shock on Ellie's face.
Mhm.
Like you can tell with Ellie in the show, like more so because in the game, you can tell she's scarred and she's like crying and Joel's like comforting her and stuff. But in this one, like Ellie is not just scarred, like she is visually like that is a changing point in her life and her mental state right there is what happened. I love David in this episode. I thought they did such a good job with him. I really love the way that the show has continued to sort of like shift expectations, and the way that it was sort of presented, because we all knew as people who've played the game kind of what the deal was with David and his flock being cannibals and stuff. So they leave these little like kind of breadcrumbs where they're talking about like, oh, we'll bury your father in the spring. And you're like,
Yes.
no,
Oh,
no,
that
you're
was
not.
Yeah.
that was
Yeah. It's
No, I
venison.
turned to my wife. I was like, no, that is not
He,
happening.
yeah, he's dinner tonight.
Yeah.
Like, and so so we kind of know stuff like that. But then when you're having all this interplay between James and David, James played by Troy Baker, of course, and there's like this seed of doubt in James's head, and I almost like they had me thinking, well, maybe David isn't aware that they're cannibals.
Mhm.
Maybe they're being cannibals kind of like behind David's back, and they're trying to stage like a coup or something like this. And they're like, hey, like actually we've been providing for you.
Mhm.
And I like how that kind of like kept me guessing, like, well, maybe David actually isn't going to be exactly how he was in the game. And it turns out that's not what was going on. But I like that they made me think for a second that it
Mhm.
was, you know? So yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah,
It continues to be a good show.
I think my expectations for this episode were quite high, especially because I was a little lukewarm on Left Behind last week. So I was kind of coming into this episode, and I think that's partially because of the lead up that we've had so far. Like Court's mentioned, right? They focused a lot more on the characters themselves. We haven't had as much of the violence, as much of the action, and again, it fits the tone of the show. So coming up to this episode, which we all knew was going to be a very physically demanding episode, a very heavy episode, and a very action focused episode, I was a little bit worried that they were going to pull back a little bit, that they were going to almost like lessen the impact of the violence by doing less of it, but kind of possibly in more grandiose ways. But I'm really glad to see that they went full board. Because that was kind of that's something I was nervous about coming into this episode, and of course going into next week, was how much they've shown Joel up until this point, like trying to avoid the violence, trying to avoid the killing. And we saw the beginning of the snap in this episode when he goes on the hunt to try to get back to Ellie, that I feel a lot better going into next week now with what has to happen next week. It's not even a question of will it happen, it has to happen. So I'm glad we got to see that. And similarly, yeah, that interrogation scene was fantastic. Again, almost beat for beat, like what we got from the game.
I think it was better.
I
thought it was better.
Yeah.
So
I'm
like
with you.
that's my thing with this episode. That interrogation scene, like my wife was like, "Oh my god." I'm like, "Yeah, like oh, Joel."
Yeah.
Like it was like, "Yes, man." Like he
exactly.
became like Pedro Pascal as Joel But as such a huge fan of the game, it's tough for me to be like, he is Joel.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the scene was like, whoa, you are Joel.
Yeah.
Like that was his Joel moment. Like he transcended the game and it was just so good.
It was incredible. Like that scene like stood out so much. And then like everything that happened, like with, shout out to Bella Ramsey who carried this episode. Like she was incredible. And like, again, any doubt that people had that she wouldn't be able to portray the more violent side of Ellie, because there were still naysayers even up until this point, just like, I don't understand how you could have anything left to say about her not being able to carry that character, because she has shown us time and time again that she can. The scene where she breaks his finger and then like, obviously the final showdown between them, she was incredible. And Scott Shepherd, who played David, really nailed that very friendly kind of, oh, we're buddies, we're going to be cool. And then when that villainous turn hits and you start to see the fallout, again, absolutely nailed it. Like Scott Shepherd was incredible in that role.
Yeah, when he slaps that young actress
Yeah.
at the dinner table, I'm like, whoa. Because
Yeah.
my wife was like, he's such a nice guy. I'm like, yeah, no, he's not. And then he does it, and she turns to me and goes, I see that now.
Yeah. And like, I know some people were saying it's like, why do they have to add this whole religious angle to it? And actually, that was part of the original vision for the game anyway. They just had to leave it on the cutting room floor. So like, I thought they nailed it, and of course, culminating with their showdown. That bar, restaurant, whatever it was, like looks exactly out of the game. Like. I was like, I remember hiding there. I remember sneaking around that corner. I remember
wish there was
crouching
glass
there.
on the floor.
I know.
Like there wasn't.
Yeah, right.
I was looking for it, and I said to my wife, I'm like, just listen to him walk on the glass, and then it never happened. I'm like, aw.
Yeah.
Like it was like the one thing. I'm like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
Like just give me the one little thing.
The little
I thought it would
glass.
add, and I thought it would add more impact, but well done on the shivving of Ellie. Well done.
Right. Like she just like that entire showdown, and then her just like the anguish and pain and rage and fear that was on Bella's face when David got on top of her at like that again, like I was just like, oh my god, again, that was a point for me that I was like, they just transcended the game in that moment. Like the anger in seething in David, and then the absolute horror and shock that we got out of Ellie in those moments, like nailed it. Similarly, I do feel like the baby girl line, and especially like them taking that moment out of the bar, I think works on its own merit, but again, when you compare it to the game, I think it is a little bit weaker. I don't think it's much weaker. I don't think it's like a significant detraction for me personally.
I think it's perfect for the show.
Yeah. So like I thought that they nailed this episode, and like especially after me being again a little like like it was good with Left Behind, they completely brought this around because of just how visceral it was. And like again, for an episode that we've been waiting for a long time, with it being the penultimate episode of the season, just absolutely nailed it. And kind of where I want to kind of take the conversation next is just talking about Troy Baker, who like, I think this was probably one of his first major actual acting roles. Like I can't remember ever seeing anything.
I would say that not mocap acting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sure.
Like, my biggest issue with this episode is I think Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker perfected that scene with 0 words. That's how good their acting was. So it's probably in my mind, it's almost unfair to Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal, because they did it perfectly and with 0 words in the game. Like he just says baby girl and that's it. And you can see it. I didn't see it this time. That's all.
Yeah, and that's totally fair because, it is a much different scene, even just like taking it being set in the day, them taking them out, taking them outside. There was a lot of little things along the way that just, it's just little differences. Like, again, everybody that I've seen talking about it online loved this episode, and I did too. I just do think that was the one moment that didn't live up to the game, but again, it still stood on its own merit. But what I am loving is how much we are getting the crossover with the games, having Troy Baker be in this role, and kind of, take on the role of James, who is in the game, which obviously has a much more minor role. Like, so cool to see him. And then for, Joel to get killed by TV Ellie was just incredible.
I know, but it still should have been done by Joel. Like, come on. Like, it was there. Like, it should have been him in the chair. Like, we all wanted it, right? It should have been him, like, sitting in the chair and pointing on the map, and then Joel killed Joel. Like, the memes just write itself.
I know. Like, I thought that was really, really cool. But kind of like where I wanted to ask you guys next is like, we didn't see Ashley Johnson. So then that means that it has to be next week.
So the preview got put up this morning. So next
Yeah.
week's preview episode. So she is in it.
Well, she has to
there
be
is
at
a
this point,
scene-
right?
There's a scene. Here's my guess. This is just me
Theorize. Tell
looking
me.
at what they show. Here they show her pregnant, about to give birth, and about to get bit by infected. So my guess is, and this is just my guess, is when she gives birth to Ellie, she dies because she's infected, and they get the baby, and that's how Ellie has immunity because she.
Oh.
Yeah, that's my guess. And
I think so too.
Yeah, that is my big guess just by watching it, because you can see her pregnant and you can see her about to get bitten. Because there's too many infected there. I don't know how she gets out of that one. But my guess is she gives birth to Ellie while she's about to turn. She doesn't turn, and that's how Ellie has immunity. That's my guess. But one thing I will take from that as well that scares the living daylights out of me, Bella Ramsey said that the next episode is going to be extremely controversial to the people that have played the game.
She said that.
Yes. And there is a scene that they have as the thumbnail of her with the plaid shirt on, sitting in the pickup truck, and Jackson's in the background, and Joel is not there.
Guess we'll see.
I am
Intriguing.
just like, I'm very intrigued by that. I'm just like.
So what are you thinking then? Okay, we're gonna spoiler warning. We're gonna start talking about episode 9 as well here.
I'm not thinking anything. I'm hoping it's not what I'm thinking. But okay. I really hope.
But that's what I mean. Okay, spoiler warning. Last of Us Part 2 / what could happen next week. What are you worried about then, Court? Tell me.
I'm worried that Joel dies before we get to Jackson. Joel will die next episode. They're gonna kill him off in episode 9, and we won't even have him next year, except for flashbacks, obviously. That's what I'm worried about.
So how do you think he dies then? Because then
I have no clue, but it's really bothering me. Go on HBO Max right now. Look at the thumbnail on their YouTube page. That is Ellie at the end of the game. There's no doubt in my mind that is Ellie at the end of the game, and Joel is not there.
Do you think it could be the scene?
It's strange.
Do you think it could be when he gets out of the car,
too, right, Seth? Like, as soon as I saw it, I'm like, what the F? And I went through the whole thing. They showed Joel going through the hospital. I am still extremely, extremely saying 100% we see Abby next week. Like, I don't see how that doesn't happen. I'm very curious on how this plays out. But man, that thumbnail it's almost irking me. Like, don't do that to me.
They did that on purpose.
I think they did too. I'm hoping they did.
Yeah, I think it's an intentional misdirect. I don't see how you don't have, whenever we get to season 2, part 2, or whatever.
Yeah, we need the bodyguard moment.
You have to have the moment in part 2 with what happens with Joel in part 2. You can't take that away.
Exactly. I'm agreeing. You
can't. You totally can't take that away. And I do. Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I think that they are going to have a little bit of legwork to do. A lot of people's complaints with part 2 is how it almost felt like there wasn't a lot of pre-planning and like making this random person Abby's dad or whatever. I don't think he's going to be so random.
Yeah.
No,
anymore.
I don't think he is either.
They got to make like a character out of him now, right? And you got to
do you think it's someone that was an actor in the game?
That'd be cool. Yeah, that'd be neat. I would like that. But I don't think they're going to kill off Joel in the next episode.
I hope not. It like irked me because I'm like, do we not get our spaceship scene? Do we like all these phenomenal moments that happen in Last of Us Part 2, even though Last of Us Part 1 is the better game? It's just no.
Part 2 is a better game.
That thumbnail, like I swear to God, this morning I debated whether I look for spoilers. And then we know people that have watched it already, Matt and I do. And I debated DMing them and be like, dude, I need to know now because I'm going on vacation. I'm about to get angry. Because I can't watch until I get back.
Then what I'm theorizing may be a major change that I think it would really depend on how they sell it, is the game obviously doesn't ever really give us a definitive notion on whether the surgery that Ellie's going to be going through is going to work or not. We don't get a definitive answer. We don't get a yes, this is going to work and she's going to live. No, she's going to die and it's not going to work. We don't get a definitive answer in any way, shape, or form.
I thought we get she's going to die.
Yeah, but like we know she's going to die, but they don't know that the cure would work. That's what it is. They know that she's going to die.
I get that. Yeah.
So I think what we may get is a more definitive answer on that respect, that we will know it would work or it wouldn't work. And my kind of inner theory is that we are going to find out that it would work and Joel kills them anyway. which again
Right.
starts to paint him in an even more negative light, because then the literal, like, salvation was right there and he took that away from them. So that's kind of where I think, because I don't see, and like kind of Seth, like you mentioned, like I think the Doctor is going to be much more present in the next episode, and we're going to possibly, like Court mentioned, possibly see a younger version of Abby. We may see more things there. But like I'm kind of curious then, Seth, what's your take on all this?
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna kill off Joel.
Yeah, I hope not.
To your point, Matt, I think it'd be interesting if they did like overtly say, because I think that makes that moment a little bit more strong,
Mhm.
of like, oh, like he knows for sure that this would have been the cure and he chose anyway. Like he made that
Mhm.
decision, and it's like he in you literally is like, and I would do it again. You
Yep.
know, and like maybe this is the kind of stuff we get. Maybe that moment is a little bit different now when he's choosing essentially to lie to Ellie. I think there's a lot that you can't change about
Yeah, agreed.
about
Mhm.
the ending of this game, because like it just takes away so much power from part two. If all of a sudden Joel doesn't, lie to her at the end of this game, at the end of the show, then so much of the power of part two is removed,
Mhm.
so there's just like there's a lot that needs to stay the same. I wonder I wonder if what she's referring to, Bella Ramsey, is like getting this little bit of Ellie's backstory that we
Okay.
don't really
Oh, like how
have.
she got it, how
How
she
she got
becomes
immune.
immune.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
because
she could be just referring to like people who don't play the game are
yeah,
not gonna they might not like this ending, right? The ending was
that's true.
controversial in the game in itself, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
So she could
true.
be referring to that. I just took it. I was like, "What the f are you doing to my masterpiece?" That's what I took it as.
Yeah, man. Well, anyway, yeah, it's going to be there's a lot of emotions going into the end of this season for sure. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to finally seeing Ashley Johnson next week. Like I can't wait to finally see that moment, to have that sort of question answered, because it does seem like, I'm totally with you, Court. In the preview we see her pregnant with this like infected running up on her, and it's
Yes.
like maybe that's what it is. Like if you are just in that 1 in a million chance where you happen to be like right about to give birth to a child pregnant, and like you get infected in that moment and the child is born, then that is how
Or
she
she gets
became
bit and
immune.
then someone comes around and the body's there and they cut the baby. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Yeah,
all these kind of things.
So
I don't know.
totally.
here's my theory. So very quickly, like I just pulled up an article from Forbes, written by Paul Tassi, referring to the quote that Bella says, and Bella said that it's going to divide people massively, massively, and then she's going on to talk about how brutal filming the episode was for her. So again, this could be speaking just to the people who haven't experienced the story before, because
That's what I'm
again,
hoping. I'm
yeah,
hoping
Yeah.
because you saw Matt, you've seen the thumbnail now, right?
yes,
Yeah. Like what the F?
that to me could be as something as simple as Joel's off screen, like right next to her.
Yeah,
You know what I
That's Joel's
mean?
shirt. She's wearing his shirt.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
but like he could have put it on her, bringing her out of the hospital. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
there are ways
Yep.
that you can tweak that still makes
Or
sense.
this could be when she goes back and gets the comic book.
Could be
Because
exactly
you gotta
Yeah,
get that last
true.
collectible. Like we're still
100%,
playing a video game while we're watching this thing.
and we're still getting it when we're still getting a Firefly trinket next episode.
Well, yeah, when are we like what the F? Well, Firefly, oh,
We need that. We need that. But
we need it. We
my
need it.
big question is like I still kind of really firmly believe that our cold open next week will be everything going on with Ashley Johnson. I think they're going to use
For
that
sure.
to kind of tee everything up, and then we're going to go straight into the episode after the credits. Am I
Do you
off
think
base
we get
here?
the bloater? I think you're right on. I think you're right on. Because
Okay.
we
Yeah.
saw the scene, and also I think you're right on because you're usually right. I'm not gonna lie. Because we saw the scene that looked almost exactly the same of when they go into the tunnel
hmm
with the top, and then they go into the tunnel. But when they showed Ashley Johnson, I don't know how that is not the cold open.
Yeah,
Especially because
I
like
think so.
we haven't had a cold open in a few episodes now, and for them to bring that back around in the closing episode to really hammer everything home, and I'm really excited about the notion that we may find out how Ellie became immune, because that's a question we never had answered in the game, right?
Yep.
And I'm sure
1000%.
Neil and the rest of the team had their kind of own head canon of how it happened. So I wonder if this is where we get that story, if this is where we get Ashley Johnson as her mom, if this is where we get how she became immune, because I do think that there's an interesting idea there in that, has she always been infected kind of thing.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's well, and it also
And
drives
can she
home like
infect people? She bit David, right?
true. Yeah. Well, and it also it drives home the just the how extraordinary the circumstance is,
Mhm.
right? And I think it makes it almost more powerful of like, wow, we have literally this like one in a million shot, this, you know, this extraordinary circumstance that created this immune little girl, and despite all of that, Joel still chooses her,
Yep.
you
And
know.
that's what I mean. Like, I'm so
Mhm.
excited to see his rampage. And I really hope they go all out on that front, because that moment in the game, for me, the first time I played it, I went into that hospital being like, all of you are dead. Like, none,
Well,
I'm
Yeah.
leaving none of you standing. Nurses gone. Doctors out. I will get to Ellie and I will protect this girl. So I hope we get him really. I hope it's not like 3 people that he takes out on the way. Like, I
no,
want to see him go nuts.
because remember he's gonna shoot that guy and he's gonna shoot him
Mhm.
good, right? But from what they have already said, it will be a bloodbath. They've already said this will be the most gory, gruesome, like no
Good.
effects. It's
Good.
going to be a bloodbath. This episode coming up.
And like
Yeah.
that's I'm so excited to see that. And like the other question that I'm kind
Echo.
yeah, see you later. But like I kind of where I wanted to end off, you know, talking about where we think things are going, the ending of next week. Do you think they're going to end with that same conversation, end on Ellie's face, and just cut to black? Do you think we're gonna? Do you think we're gonna end season 1 the same way we did in the game? Because again, the abruptness of that ending adds to the weight that it carries. Do you think? And the show's been pretty good. A lot of the major moments have, like, you know, again, 1-to-1 over, or very very close to. Do you think we're gonna end the same way? Court, do you think we're
Leave it.
getting the same ending?
Mhm.
I hope so.
Hmm.
Because the ending is extremely, extremely good. But you never know when people are going to be like, well, I want to do it my way. He might tweak it a bit,
Hmm.
but I think to your words about making it as powerful as it can be for the next season, I think you have to, because that ending is so good. Like,
Yeah, I
don't
want
do
it
that. Like,
exactly
you
the
can't
same.
take away that. You can't, when it's perfect, you just don't leave it. Leave it alone.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, exactly the same. Don't touch it. I want the exact same like musical swell.
Yep.
The way that like the guitar kind of like goes off for a second, and then he just says like I swear, and she just says okay, and then just cut
Done.
to black. Done. That's it. That don't touch it. Leave it alone. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Right. There are a couple moments that are just perfect. They're sacred. You don't touch them. That's one of them.
And the show's been really, really good at leaving those moments intact. So I'm hopeful to see the, you know, we'll see what happens with the season finale next week. Any closing thoughts? Anything that we didn't touch on? Anything that you wanted to bring up before we kind of head on the road to the ending of the episode? Court, anything that we left off that you want to bring up?
No, it's just I can't watch it with everybody next week, and everybody's gonna watch it, and I won't be able to. And it's just I'm like debating whether or not I say to my parents, "All right, I guess you're getting HBO for a week, like, because you're paying for it for the month. Like, it is what it is."
I mean,
Yeah.
not a bad idea.
No, it's not a bad idea at all.
It's not a bad idea at all. Seth, what about yourself?
Man, we really did just spend like this whole episode just speculating on next week, didn't we?
Ah,
We
whatever. It
we're
was this
so
week's episode is more action, right? There's a lot
yeah,
of less conversation. It's just like, hey, kudos to the horse not blowing up this time, right?
Yeah, it
You
just gets
know?
shot instead.
fair.
Yeah.
Fair. Well, you know what though? What I will say, one thing that I really love, just going back to David for a split second,
Hmm.
is I love how he is somebody who cares about power like so much over people that it's almost like the most important thing to him.
Hmm.
Like he was so hell bent on keeping Ellie alive, regardless of whatever like intentions he had for her already in his own head. Like he recognized her violent heart,
Yep.
right? That he says that I love that exchange that between him and Ellie in the cell, and he recognizes that in her, and he's not wrong, is the thing. Like he sees that in her. And this version of Ellie, we're getting like those violent, almost feral like shades from Bella Ramsey's
Hmm.
Ellie. She's not as adorbs as she is in the first game, right? She in the first game she's like this cute little girl that you want to protect. And in this, Bella Ramsey's Ellie is like violent and feral, right?
Yep.
And it's setting up part 2 again. So it's not so jarring in part 2 and we see the things we know she's going to be doing,
Yep.
right?
And like,
So
I'm entirely with you there, because I think that's a great point to bring up. Is throughout this season, as adorbs as Ellie has been, like we are seeing these kind of different future potentials for her. With the Fedra agent, we basically get the good. This is how Ellie could go, and it would stick the landing if she goes this way into the path of quote unquote good, right? Safety. We have Joel, who is this almost like middle ground in between what is good and evil, this man who is just trying to survive. And then we got David, where again, it is a very realistic possibility that Ellie could go down that road given the wrong leadership, the wrong kind of trust, where she does become this like almost like incredibly violent sociopathic leader to what is essentially a cult. So I love how they're drawing these different parallels for her and being like, okay, kind of leaving you with the question of where does she go? Because we won't know until it happens, but it's just really interesting how much of David we saw in Ellie and vice versa, because there are parallels there to be drawn, and I think the show did a much better like way of showing us being like they are a little bit more similar than you'd like to think. And
yeah,
I kind of
I also really loved his point in his little monologue about cordyceps.
yes,
And how cordyceps were the thing that actually he's like, actually, like I turned to religion almost as like a necessity to lead these people. They need that. And he came to that realization from the cordyceps.
Yep.
And again, tying into the central theme of love, this show made the point to say even the cordyceps ultimately are driven by love. Right?
Yep.
Really cool.
Yeah,
I loved that.
I thought that was very, very cool, because again, they allude to this, God that he found to be the Catholic Christian God that the rest of the kind of flock follows. But we get this idea of him being like, no, the God for him are the cordyceps, right? Like that's what he found to be the kind of true calling of what comes next. It was really weird and creepy and very, very unnerving in a really cool way. But yeah, that brings us to the end of this episode. Let us know in the comments, what did you think? How did you feel about episode 8, and what are you hoping for in episode 9? But before we go, we of course need to ask our favorite question. Court, if people wanted to see and hear more from you, where could they do so?
You can find me on Twitter at Court Lalonde or at Carpool Gaming, or every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern at Three Dads in a Console.
Make sure you go check Court out in all of those places. We're going to miss you next week, buddy, as you are on vacation, but we promise we will close the show off strong and mightily. Seth, if people want to see and hear more from you, where could they do so?
You can follow me on Twitter at $2 Hero. Court will make you proud. We'll miss you, buddy.
Yep. You can find me over on Twitter at Matt_SilverSoul, and of course on the PlayStation Drive each and every week, which was live today at 2 p.m. Eastern. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay adorbs out there. This has been us, and this was The Last of Us. We'll see you next week for the finale. Peace.